The NBA has always been America's game. Well, kinda. It was invented by a Canadian, but that's besides the point. And throughout the past few decades, the league has shifted from being a primarily American sport to featuring players from many countries all over the world. What was once a struggling league before the induction of the three-point line and the elite rivalry between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird slowly blossomed into becoming one of the main programs featured on millions of televisions across America. As Michael Jordan grew into his great prophecy early on in his career and the league reached record high viewership numbers, the only thing missing was a little bit of representation for everyone outside the states. In 1989, a small spark would create the ultimate domino effect for many countries in Europe and Asia, especially as FIBA changed the rules following the 1988 bronze Olympic finish by the US to allow NBA players to compete in international competitions such as the Basketball World Cup and, most importantly, the Olympics. So this obviously tickled the fancy of many of the NBA's best athletes, combined with the NBA feeling pressure to send their best out now that the US had just gotten the bronze medal, and they formed the 1992 Dream Team, which is still highly regarded as possibly the best Olympic basketball team ever assembled, featuring Jordan, Barkley, Magic, Bird, Clyde, the Admiral, Ewing, Pippen, Stockton, Mullen, a guy who was very in tune with the kids, and Christian Laettner. As you can imagine, nobody could prepare for the decimation that this roster would bring upon the world, with an average margin of victory being 43.8 points, and unsurprisingly, they would moonwalk their way to Olympic gold. This Olympic run would boost the public image of America's talent in the sport and the NBA as a whole, but nobody could really predict the impact that this would have on the globalization of the game. Fast forward 30 years, and we reach the 22-23 NBA season, where 120 international players represented 40 countries from places all over the world, and where the MVP race over the next couple of seasons would be dominated by many incredibly talented stars, yet none of them reigning from the USA. Looking back, the 1992 Dream Team created the most impactful chain reaction in the history of the league, and the landscape of the NBA would be unrecognizable today if it wasn't for that historic roster of all-time greats. How's it going, guys? Get it? It's Mason, and today is a day of appreciating the international players in today's NBA and the sport of basketball as a whole, and how they have forever changed the way that we perceive the league. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have not already. We don't have teachers on this channel, so you have to sub. Now, the main word we're going to be using today is globalization. What this means is pretty much the earth-wide expansion as much as possible in order to push the game, the sport of basketball, into as many homes, families, people, athletes as possible, and to make sure that everyone and their mom knows about the sport and what it can do not only for the people who play it, but the people who watch it. In my life personally, basketball has always been one of my comfort things, whether it's shooting around at night with headphones in, whether it's watching an elite matchup between LeBron and Steph Curry, or watching the Thunder moonwalk their way to another 30-point blowout. It's always been something that's deeply been tied to my heart. And for many folks in countries in Europe and Asia, and even parts of Africa and South America, these folks have not really had the exposure to basketball that many of us here in the States have. But luckily, due to that Dream Team, they were able to quickly figure out over the past couple of decades from their own country's stars what the game of basketball is truly capable of. When you look at Europe, they have a lot of very good star players, and especially some of the best players that we have in the modern NBA. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic being the biggest highlighted name, as well as a guy like Victor Wembanyama, who has already shown dominance early in his career, and he is just getting started at the ripe age of 21. In an article posted in February by Sportsepreneur, I hope I said that right, they talk about the TV ratings declining slightly in the US between 5 and 7%, which is a slightly noticeable number, as some NBA fans here in the US don't like how the game has evolved over the years. However, they do talk about how the game has grown so much in many foreign countries, such as France seeing a 177% increase in subscription services since Victor Wembanyama has joined the NBA, Slovenia with a 49% boost, and guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo and Nikola Nikola Jokic for Greece and Serbia respectively being able to help those countries become basketball fans just by being dominant on their own. In the 23-24 NBA season, the NBA generated 32 billion social media views, and 70% of these views came from outside the United States. Serbian audience numbers have tripled since Jokic started his historically dominant run, and even fans in countries such as China and Spain continue to watch the league, and their viewership over there continues to flourish. But the truth is, the NBA wasn't always exactly like this. It did take a lot of hard work and dedication from some of the stars, especially of the 2000s, such as Dirk Nowitzki, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili, that were especially able to help push the game into Europe because of their teams being very successful. Dirk obviously being the greatest shooting big man that we had seen up until the time, with an unstoppable signature fadeaway that captivated every single member of the audience. A guy like Yao Ming is especially credited for help pushing the game into China, as he was their first big star, and while his career didn't exactly pan out as fans were hoping, he still captured the hearts of millions on his way to several all-star appearances and making the Basketball Hall of Fame. Now, obviously, looking at the sport, the United States has quite an advantage when it comes to the development of these players and just the history of the game itself, but it is pretty cool to see that other countries are able to produce top-end talent on par with the best of the best in the NBA, but we can see still a little bit of a discrepancy in between the average player overseas versus the average player in the NBA. We have, however, seen the best international players bring the best competition to the Olympics. We saw an all-time world-class performance from LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry, which many of us viewers will never be able to forget. But as we saw, they did face some trouble along the way. Close games against Serbia and even France in the final showed that other countries can somewhat hang with the US compared to back to that 1992 Dream Team, where those guys didn't have any sort of competition whatsoever. They still might have won if they were blindfolded every game. But the most important lesson here is that we get to see the competition between foreign countries and the US, as some of these countries have now produced such great talent that we are able to finally see the most competitive Olympic basketball that the world is probably ever going to see, and I hope going forward that it continues to stay this way as other countries try to rival the NBA's top stars that do reign from America. As the league has expanded into other countries, we have also seen that the way that the sport is played in different countries can alter the way that some of these guys not only develop as players, but how they use their skill sets, frames, and knowledge to be able to really flourish against the best of the best. We see a guy like Nikola Jokic, who is very slow that you're pretty sure a tortoise could beat him in a foot race. However, he's so methodical and smart and has had one of the most dominant all-time peaks that we have seen in recent history, and he still has plenty of years left in the tank. We just saw a season of Joel Embiid 2 years ago where before injury he was averaging more points than minutes per game, averaging 36 points a game with some of the most incredible footwork and 3-level scoring dominance from a 7-footer that we will ever see, and the guy didn't pick up a basketball until he was 16 years old. We've seen Luka Doncic be one of the NBA's most premier scorers and playmakers and one of the best offensive engines in basketball, especially over the last 5 seasons. We've seen a guy like SGA do similar stuff, and especially scoring wise, picking up the last 3 years, averaging 30 points per game every single season. Just this most recent year, walking home not only with an MVP award, but a trophy in his trophy case as well, and a finals MVP to pair with it. We've seen Giannis Antetokounmpo take home 2 MVP awards along with a Defensive Player of the Year, showing his physical specimen two-way dominance in ways that we have never seen before, and just how much of a genetic freak a human can be and how much it can prove to be valuable in the game of basketball, being almost 7 feet tall and a freak athlete with incredible dimensions that don't even begin to make sense. And from what it looks like, the US has some catching up to do. When you look at the ESPN's top 100 player rankings, the top 5 spots are all dominated by foreign players, meaning that although the US might have more guys in the top 100, the international game has grown so much that they've been able to dominate the top end of the NBA talent. And while you may think it's a bad thing that the top guy or top couple of guys in the NBA aren't American grown players, all this does is help promote the game to fans all over the world, seeing that they can finally be represented by a great player from their country and cheer for them from afar. far. So with all that being said, what is the next step for the NBA? As recently mentioned by Adam Silver, he is considering expanding and creating an NBA league just for Europe and having the league buy their way into that European market, which would be nice because also some of the leagues that don't get as much attention would be put on the spotlight by the big monopoly company being the NBA. Now, the financial and the business part is the biggest concern for the NBA, just trying to fill that market and be able to be profitable as well. The nice thing is that the NBA does play games over in the Middle East and in Europe throughout the preseason, and this does a similar effect to how the NFL plays their games in Dublin, Ireland and in London to try to captivate some of the European fans to see what the hype is all about. After all, the best way to truly experience a sport is to go and be there in person, and I think the NBA, if they were to start this league over in Europe, it would pick up soon enough. It just might take a few years of failure to really get them off their feet. But if this is the case with the NBA expanding in Europe, do we think that America will still hold the best NBA athletes in the world? Although the top guys in the league now are from mostly overseas, it doesn't change the fact that the US has still produced the most NBA players and will continue to do so with the incredible college programs, along with all the hype behind high school basketball, which is very unrivaled to how it is in other countries. After all, some of these athletes will really take pride in playing in their home country, and I think this expansion of the league, though, reaching millions and millions of more potential players throughout other countries, I think all this does is help fuel the competition to give us the best possible product as NBA fans. And again, if it wasn't for how dominant that 1992 Dream Team was, with all those guys being from the United States, showcasing to the entire world what it means to be great at basketball, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are today. What do you think of the globalization of the sport as a whole, and do you think that international players will continue their step up into the NBA's? Oh my god, what am I saying? Again, we have seen so many incredible players join our league into the past 10 to 15 years, especially from Europe, but we have seen unreached heights by the players here in America. Because as Noah Lyles said, world champions of what? Well, how about world champions of basketball? Because for right now, the United States still is that, and I think they will still continue to do so as long as they keep sending out the best of the best. But the real best of the best is you. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you have not already, and I'll catch you next time. See ya, cuh.